My name is Gilda Santos. I'm from the School of Criminology, University of Porto, and we are here in Athens at Eurocrime Conference. And today it is my great pleasure to be speaking with Professor Vania Ceccato. Professor Vania Ceccato is based at ECOH Royal Institute of Technology in Stockholm, which is the largest school of engineering in Sweden. Her career has spanned several countries, and her research has made major contributions to fields such as environmental criminology, safe and crime in transit environments, and rural criminology, which led actually to her Life Achievement Award in rural criminology in 2024. So, thank you so much, and thank you, Vania, for joining us today and agreed to do this interview. I would like to jump into our questions because we do not have much time. So, Vania, you have a very interesting journey, starting with your education. You studied in Brazil before pursuing your doctorate at KTH in Sweden, later continuing with your international experiences, for example, in Cambridge University, where you spent 6 years, I believe. So, could you please start by telling us what motivated your move from Brazil to Sweden and how this shaped your academic path?
Yeah, first of all, it's really nice to be here, and I want actually to answer, to be interviewed by you, Gilda. Thank you. Yeah, I don't think that I have a very much a linear path in my career. I have been very much interested in different kinds of research questions. I am a geographer, and I have since the beginning very much interested in the geography of crime. And so one of the things that I want to do when I finished my undergraduate students and masters was basically think about a PhD perhaps in Europe, and I was particularly interested in Scandinavia, and we had some connections in Sweden, and that's why I ended up in Sweden first place. There was an interesting, I had an interesting on issues of environment, and one of the institutions that had these connections between the organization of the space, the city, and even a little bit of safety at that time was the Royal Institute of Technology. So I ended up in Sweden because of also this initial interest in doing my PhD.
Abroad. But why Scandinavia, if I might?
Yes, I had read an interest in environmental issues. We also had some family connections, people that actually lived back in Brazil, which I grew up actually seeing photographs of snow and things like that. And for a tropical bird like me, I thought it was completely exotic. So I tried to combine the two things, and I aim at going to
combining both personal
exactly.
and professional experiences.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, so based on that background you just shared, like you are a geographer and your education was in the beginning based on that, I would like to move to the beginning of your interest in criminology, because you can say that there was a shift from geography to criminology. So my question is, how did you first become interested in criminology, particularly environmental criminology, like you were saying, and geospatial methods?
There was no shift, because when I was a student, I undergraduate in Brazil, I used to spend Fridays afternoons sitting in a library and looking at maps of crime. And that was something back there, late 80s. So there was not much a shift. So my master's was composed of an analysis of quality of life in a Brazilian city, and one important dimension was safety. and I was pulling out all kinds of data from the police, actually written, you know, by hand, and putting this in a GIS. So I read, you know, British literature in particular. At that time, there was the bookshelf was not full of English books at that time, but the ones that were there already really caught my ear, my eyes, and I was taken by the maps and the dynamics of crime in this city.
When you did your undergraduate studies back in Brazil, there were no criminology courses taught there. It's a recent thing.
Oh well, criminology is it's a growing field there, and although my experience from criminology in Brazil is that is very much dominated by law. And then you have also a group of people that do similar things I do, that are actually in economy. So again, it's a very different
and psychology, perhaps.
Psychology, for sure. So it is a mix, as it is in Sweden. So I would say it's some sort of a rich field with some fields dominating, and it definitely was not much of a geography, but it is growing. Even within, geography, you have a couple of people that actually came from my own university nowadays that are doing environmental criminology nowadays, and they are not only in São Paulo. So we see a definitely growing field within Latin America in general, and I would say I can witness clearly what is happening in Brazil, because I have more contact with the language. With them.
So this is very interesting, because as we were discussing, I kept thinking about interdisciplinary, and criminology is a highly interdisciplinary area and discipline. And your work, based on everything you have just described, and your career and everything you've published and presented, we can see, and your education, of course, we can see that your work is highly interdisciplinary. So, like you said before, you were trained as a geographer, you work as a criminologist, and you're based in a school of engineers, an engineering school in architecture, like we were discussing before. So how does your interdisciplinary profile, and might I add this very interesting profile, help your work advance the field of environmental criminology? How do you think is this helpful or not, and how this is a contribution to help the development of this field?
Thank you for the question. I think criminology is a very complex subject, and there are a number of, or most of, I think, subjects that we study in criminology. They are complex and wicked, and in that sense it is a good thing to, I think, maybe think about those kinds of problems outside of the box. I do try to do that. I'm not sure if I succeed always. Okay. So I think even if I don't want it, I always am looking for tools to try to answer research questions that people maybe have not looked at it in the same lens that I'm using. And if I have a friend that is mathematician and use machine learning, or I will talk to him. Yeah. So I think it's the focus is on all kinds of research questions that you are really interested in. And the rest is history. You may work with a historian, sometimes you work with a biologist, or sometimes, and this is guided by the research questions that you want to unravel. Criminology of a high quality is about that. It's trying to unravel the kinds of subjects that maybe, people have been built theories and they are very helpful. So we don't need to start from scratch. So what I'm thinking is reusing and being informed by the theories that the legacy of criminology, and that they are always very nice from all we know in environmental criminology. I can name a few, but I think nowadays our topics they demand much more. You need to focus on issues that demand more long-term thinking. You need to have a more systems thinking and not look only crime specific or
a broader spectrum.
Definitely, yeah. And I think the interdisciplinary lens contribute to that. I mean, of course, there are some subjects that demand a more specific look, but I would say that it's kind of hard to find one subject area in which you cannot learn from many fields.
From many other fields.
Especially nowadays when many of the methodologies has a lot to do with computer science and AI and so on.
Actually, that was also one of the questions I would like to put, because I work, as you know, with several colleagues from the School of Criminology. We are using these new methodologies to advance criminology and using it to explore the field of environmental criminology. And this is something I would also like to ask you. With the rise, and we are debating it a lot about AI particularly, but also virtual reality and remote sensing and so on. And this is entering academia quite a lot, and we are debating it. Are they useful? Are they not? They're not useful. And this is a question I really would like to ask you. How do you think Europe and European criminology is evolving methodologically? How are these tools, in your view, reshaping how we study urban safety, because it's one of your areas of interesting, or better still, and you started by talking about that a little bit a while ago, but I really would like to hear you more about this. In your view, what is the role of technology in helping to elucidate environmental criminology and environmental criminological problems?
Mm-hmm.
Do you see the use of this technology as a plus, as a con? Is it mixed? What do you think?
I'm biased towards probably a positive answer since I'm based in a school of engineering,
technology,
right? Technology. But I will try to answer your first question, which I think is more tricky. How technology can actually be, some sort of a support for the method, for criminology in Europe. I think anywhere, a new tool can be a resource, and it's not the first time that we think about technology as one way, a positive way towards the development of a science. It's kind of difficult to generalize because we are talking about a number of things here. We are talking about new data sources that you mentioned, remote sensing. It has been there, since the Second World War. Actually, it's coming now towards criminology, but it has been and evolved since the Second World War. And then you have crowdsourced data, and you have Google Street View images. I'm going to present a paper about that. But you also have the modelings and the machine learning AI that is more towards not the data in itself, but is also the way you do things, the making of. And so I think we needed to break the answer here probably in two parts. There will always be some sort of risk, on misusing of the data. We could do that even with the traditional official statistics. There is an old an old book called How to Lie with Maps. And that's an example, a very old actually, but it's kind of, geographers would know that. And again, it's not about new technologies and new. Still, it's what we do with that kinds of data and methodology that actually will either bring light to the field or just guide us to say maybe, reinforce things that probably should not be even said.
Okay.
So the use of maybe information or detection of patterns that maybe the questions even maybe should I state those kinds of questions in the first place. So I think I put much more responsibility on the researcher than into the technology, the data, exactly. Yeah. But I'm an optimist. I think that there is a vast, immense, resource.
They're useful and should be used.
Definitely. I'm seeing like an avalanche of new possibilities, both in terms of new kinds of data, kinds of things that we can unravel, and then you see, oh, I was expecting that would be so cool to unravel this, but still there are so many other problems. So you open the Pandora box and you see the good and the bad there. Okay. So it's always some kind, but it's good. We are uncovering things that a stone that is not
Yeah. So rewinding a little bit to our previous question. You said that what's really important in research for you is a research question, what you like to know. And just a small question. Does this research question, what do you think first about the research question, of course, and does this shape the methods you're going to use? So you define the methods based on solely your research question, or there's something else, methods you use that will guide how you conduct your research? There's a direct link between your question and the methods. You think about it simultaneously, because sometimes when you're thinking, I'm going to explore this and I'm going to be using that, and it's sometimes almost simultaneously. Is like that for you, or there are several stages that you go until you decide whichever method?
Of course, we are kind of bound to the kinds of toolbox we have as soon as you become a geographer, and then you get exposed to criminologists. I spent 6 years, as I mentioned before, in the UK, involved in Cambridge, and of course you end up being a mix of all these kinds of all this knowledge that is the result of these interactions with these people, so it's I do think that we end up being what we are because we try to define our research questions based on these kinds of experience we had. Yeah. And but I would say like this: I don't define the research, the methodology first, and then I just some kind of testing the technique for testing. Although it can be quite maybe to just do that, and sometimes I guess there is still a tendency of trying to try out the methodology, but I do think that still is very much what defines my research question is much more, I would say, and it's much more what I am. There are people ask me, why do you work with rural criminology? And I would say, I lived up to 8 years old in the countryside. I would go around barefoot most of my day, and I would walk to my school in the rural areas, in the middle of sugar cane and things like that. So for me, it is definitely those kinds of women's safety. It all have to do what you are.
Your personal experiences are shaping your research interests.
Yes.
Yeah, that's very interesting. That's very, very, very interesting, because we put ourselves in our researches and the issues that concern us and are reflected in our studies Um, just a reflection. That's very
Yeah.
interesting. So, picking up on what you just said about being raised in your first years in Brazil, I would like to go and talk a little bit about the global south and the influence of Brazil in your work and your connections still with research in Brazil. You have conducted 2 major global studies in criminology and have actively worked on issues that are relevant to Brazil. We were speaking a few minutes back about it. And you have often highlighted the importance, and we were discussing that as well, of bringing insights from the global south into the broader criminological debates. So my question for you today, can you please share an example of research from Brazil, of how research from Brazil has helped you to reframe or has helped in general to reframe or challenge these established theories that you were talking about in the beginning in environmental criminology? Could you please?
Yeah, thank you. Yes, there are. The list I think is long. Partially because often I see a lot of cool research and nice research being done in local languages. I can only read Swedish and Portuguese, some Spanish, obviously, and a bit of French. But again, I see quite a lot of interesting, sometimes reports and things that never reach the international audience. So getting back to your question related to how the global south would inform criminology in general, I think that there is some. I would say I wouldn't go to the point and say that there is something special about particular contexts that that are important to be studied from a particular perspective. I would say maybe we can use some of these theories that are from global north to the global south. I have been doing this forever, so I don't claim any kind of that it needs to be that only theory of the global south. That it's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that there are certain phenomena that are not even known in the eyes of a more wide audience, because maybe they never make it because of the barriers of language. This is one thing, but also because there are a number of topics that perhaps are not mainstream criminology, right? So environment criminology per se is not very mainstream. Probably what is the big chunk of criminology is still why people commit crime, right? We are more interested in this, in my case I'm more interested in how you can plan cities that are safer. Who are safer there?
Prevention.
And you ask me how the global south can be inform the global north. I have seen studies carried out by friends in Brazil in favelas or even in more poor areas that show how, for instance, social disorganization theory doesn't fit. So this is one. And then the question why? Because there are particular contextual issues that you would, why it's important? Because maybe the kinds of interventions that we, just copy paste to those contexts won't work.
They're very different realities. And
Although I don't want to put that everything is relative, I do think that there are things that we can learn. Instead of we stopping just saying, oh, it doesn't fit, we can say, oh, why it doesn't fit, and how can we unpack that to learn more, to actually add it to both theory but also to the empirical evidence that's there. Women's safety in particular, I have seen solutions in crime prevention that I haven't seen anywhere.
Yeah.
So people, because it's some sort of a new country, I'm talking, for instance, particularly Brazil here, people are trying out all sorts of things and have seen kinds of, interventions that people are doing, solutions using technology in particular, that are amazing, makes me cry when I see it. So I would say we need to learn more from both ways, and not just because we need to, but because there are things to learn.
Yeah.
Not only in terms of the different types of research questions, different phenomena, or maybe they are similar. Who knows? The others is so comparative research. I have if you listen to certain people, they think it's rubbish, but I don't think. I think it's something that could promote. I mean, here in Europe, a European is a good example when we work with different kinds of constellations of countries in these European networks that make, honestly, I think it's a great base to meet each other, but also doing good research that is policy relevant. And then there is, for instance, the Global South, the potential to also identify solutions that maybe people haven't figured out. When you talk about Global South, you are talking about scarcity of resources.
Yeah.
So people needed to be innovative, they needed to be creative to come up with new solutions. And maybe we're spoiled, and we don't think outside of the box. But people are there thinking, oh, maybe if we
try this.
Absolutely. So I think it's about learning about phenomena, about new ways of doing things, but also finding possible solutions. Maybe won't be applied elsewhere, but it could be.
It could be.
Yeah. It could.
But I would like. Thank you so much, Vania. That's very interesting. And I was, when we were speaking, I was just thinking about what you said at the beginning. But language, even though it's extremely important to learn from the experience of other countries and other regions, of course, that's clear. You talked before about the importance of language and how we communicate. And I'm from Portugal, as you know, you're from Brazil, and we have other colleagues from different countries that work in their own languages and could write in their own languages. But you said it's difficult to disseminate our research and our work in our own language because of the limits that we all know. And this question of language is something I would like to bring to the interview as well and have your opinion about that. I already know from what you said that it's something that is important to you, but like you said, and I would like to go a little bit more on that if I may, language plays a key role in the diffusion of knowledge. We have said that, you have said that, and if you can go a little bit further about this, I would like to ask you, how do you see the role of English? Because here we are all speaking in English, for example, at Eurocrime Conference is the official language. We are all speaking in English, in this case for Portuguese and any other languages for that matter. Like you said, English is your third language, so we have a lot of issues here, aspects here. But the thing is, how do you see the role of English, of Portuguese or any other language in shaping which criminological ideas gain visibility globally? Because like you said, perhaps there were a lot of interesting studies done, for example, in Brazil, that are not being disseminated or that are not known in other parts, even though they are good studies with great ideas and great solutions, because they are written in Portuguese. It's talking about reports, Portuguese written in Portuguese. So, in your view, what are the risks of these communication barriers or the challenge, and what do you think could be the solutions to overcome these difficulties that you were referring?
I think obviously it's a good thing that we have a common language. I think we mentioned before the issue of using language and the difficulties of trying to make knowledge in our area that maybe it's not in English to an older audience. I mean, we know the impact because we can see by not being a non-native speaker that we are missing stuff. There is part of the dialogue that is missing. The voices are not there. So I don't think that is only a question about publications. I think that the problem, it's not a problem, I see as actually something that we can work on, is that the fact that every time you use the language as a tool, you also frame a research question in a particular way. So if you don't, for certain types of subject areas, and probably criminology is not as sensitive, but I would say for like anthropology is, if you don't use the same language, you don't capture everything. So I do see the need of opening up for other kinds of languages because I see it as a way of decolonizing criminology in a way that we can frame, a question that is seen through the lens of those that are maybe exposed to a particular problem. I'm not saying that English you cannot just translate and doing that, but I would say that there are certain aspects of the subject area or object of study that is better framed if, for instance, the original language is associated to it. So it is already from the beginning, when you define the object of study, that the language is already there. So it's a question about giving voice to that particular aspect. And if you use English, which has a wonderful tradition, but it's a different one from maybe other contexts around the world, you may miss that.
Yes.
And that is the risk, I think. But of course, there is also the issue of a publication. I have had many students, for instance, from Brazil or Latin America come to Sweden to do part of their work.
Research,
And we see, for instance, the barriers that language may impose, even for publications, because I am the one that would be the corresponding author, because I am in an institution, but the visitor were not, but actually he was the one that was the first author, but then the paper would not be an open access. So it's a structural, a systemic way of keeping away, exactly, of I'm not even if you write in English, there are these kinds of structural barriers. Now things has changed in my institution because I started spelling this out because I thought it was a problem. But we could pick up a number of other things which make this challenging.
Yeah.
But I would say I'm kind of optimistic. I think nowadays with AI and all sorts of, even with Google Translate, you could go a long way just to download the report and then questionnaires and you can do that nowadays. So I hope that future generations won't face the same kinds of barriers that we had in the past, and it's just more fluid in the way that people communicate through social media, and things are much shorter, and so I would say I think the barriers will not be I would say it's not on the technological side. It's more, but so I do think that there are quite a bright side of the technology that can bridge the languages barriers that are there. Although I still think that,
Okay, I understand what you say. Your technology is helping us in several areas, including communication, and I think that's a point you were trying to make, and I completely agree. We use it in everyday life, so yeah. But I was also thinking of this question about language and communication, not from the scientific community, that was the bit we were discussing here, but something that is very important to me, and I think to you as well, because your work, it's theoretically okay, but with very practical implications. You talked about a lot during this intervention about solutions, and I think that's very important, the interplay and the connection between research and practice. And this is something that is very important to me. How do we, and I know from your work that to you as well, how do we translate our research into practice, into these solutions, and how do we communicate them to people working on the field and decision makers that are going to be using our information? How do we communicate and explain our research to them based on the language we use? So this is something I would like to, if you won't mind, shift our conversation to, and linking it to your work to the work of your research team. So you have a very interesting role in building research communities. We have talked about this, so I would like, based on this and the interplay between research and practice and communication, how do we communicate this, I would like to ask if you could walk us through the creation and evolution of your urban and community safety research group at KTH. Of course, we had to go there, and I would like to explore a little bit, if you care to share with us, your role in founding, what was on the base of the founding and developing the Safe Places Network. It's an amazing group with an amazing work, as an amazing work. How did these initiatives come about, and what role do you think they play in connecting research with practice, communicating, linking academia and field, academia and decision making? What do you think?
Yes, thank you. Lots of questions there,
yeah.
But I would say I'm still learning. It is an unfinished project because, of course, there is still a lot to do, and maybe every time we maybe organize a seminar or a webinar or a course, there will be new challenges. So I'm still learning. New groups of, I would say, groups of practitioners will demand certain things that others wouldn't. So it's not easy. It's not. And you ask me why you started doing that. I think I felt quite alone in a university that no one was working with issues that actually was of my interest. I remember when I started talking about crime in my institution, people would make jokes about, oh, that is the lady that will work with crime and punishment, ha 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 ha. Yeah. And so again, I didn't really take, I thought it was just cool to be a little bit different thinking, but I also felt that I had to speak up because people wouldn't see me. So to create my own space, I had really to say, this is what I'm doing, and this have a relevance.
It's important.
20 years, 30 years ago, Sweden didn't have many of the challenges that Sweden has today with
Yeah.
shootings and violence. I'm not saying that it's a lot of a problem, but the challenges are bigger, and it is important to discuss those in a more wide context. But at the time when I was starting my career, I felt quite alone. But I did found quite a lot of connections with people in practice, and that kept me going. And that was with police. It was people that work on municipalities. So then I quickly had to learn Swedish, because that was my...
You need to interact with them.
Absolutely, absolutely. And learn, because what you think that, you are doing this contact with society, but actually what you get is that you learn from them. So it is a much more, balanced relationship. It's not that
we giving them.
Yeah, it's not spoon feeding. It is. I felt bad when I realized that actually I was learning from them, and that's what I'm saying, is that I don't know, how to do it. I'm still learning, because every time we put together, of course, we have now over a couple of years now had this experience in working with practitioners. So some we did well, others we didn't too well, and so this interaction has been bumpy sometimes, but we also learned from this kind of experience. Many of my projects come with these kinds of discussions, and we find out that actually I stated the question from the wrong side. So I would say,
practice as informed.
Absolutely.
Your studies.
And for me, I think because I'm in a school of engineers, it comes natural that we have these kinds of links with society, because much of what we do, although informed by theory, it does, we look for trying to identify things that we can immediately change in reality. It doesn't mean that we always have an answer to do that. Sometimes we say, I don't know, I cannot give any new light on this matter, which is also a possibility, but we try at least to say new ways of trying, or maybe not new, but at least trying to reflect upon the Nordic context. Sometimes it's a question of, we see that the empirical results actually can change theory, and that is the best, but it not always happen, and actually rarely happen. So sometimes it's just a little new dot, in my, as
connect everything.
But so theories eventually change a little bit, but not a lot. So I'm kind of happy when we see that a tunnel has a new light, because then you change a little bit. It's not a big thing, but
you contributed to the solution.
Yeah, a little thing will do, actually.
That's very interesting. And as we approach the end, because our time is almost up, I have two questions that I still would like to ask of you, if you won't mind. One is based on this, because the relationship between theory and empirical research and practice made me think about the scenario of criminology in Sweden, like in a European conference, and I would like to discuss a little bit about what you think of Sweden's place within the broader criminological research and debates nowadays. What do you think is the place of Sweden? How do you describe criminology as a discipline in Sweden, even though I know your work is interdisciplinary, I've covered that, but could you please share your views about that?
Yes, I come from Brazil, which is a very unequal country. so landed to a country like Sweden that equal values of gender and all these kinds of welfare state values are very strong. It is a major for me. It was a major shift. Although I think I end up in Sweden just because I want to live in a place like that, just that really aligned with my own values. And so I think the Nordic countries has loads to guide, but also that we can learn from Europe, definitely. But I do think that in times that we live today, we cannot take for granted that human rights are there for everybody. And I'm talking about women's rights. I'm thinking about race, the intersectional, safety in general. I think it is so. Sweden, as a Nordic and welfare state country, is still and I'm very proud to be there and to feel that our research doesn't need to accommodate for a high agenda that doesn't fit to my own. So I think it's part of what we do, the way we think. Public transportation needs to be safe for all, for instance, which is one of the things I work, and it is quite of it's. So what is the contribution of the Nordic countries, or Sweden in particular? I think we can contribute quite a lot on this matter because it is part of what we, what are our values, and in times
the
like nowadays,
of the country as well.
I think. And of course, in another minor context, is I come from a country that is, tropical and very hot, and light of the days, a blessing. But Sweden, you have very dark, and there are things that I have to frame the research question in completely different ways. So environmental criminology is kind of get new ways of thinking just because I'm write stuff that is based in Sweden, and it would be very different if I would be writing from Brazil in equatorial place. So this kind of thing, and I don't think that has a lot to do with, but I do think that still there is this kinds of nice little things of everyday life that will shape not only our daily routines, the way that we think about object of studies, and in particular criminology.
Okay, thank you. So I really would like to go on and on and on, but they are making me signs, so just one small question to finish, because I think from this interview and knowing your career, you have a very interesting path, and you are an established geographer, criminologist, everything. So as we approach the end, I just have one more question. What advice would you give to future generations, to new criminologists, people that are starting their careers in criminology? What advice would you give to them based on all your experiences, based on your journey from Brazil to Europe, everything?
Yeah, I knew that question would come. I think I would say just one thing: stay curious from the beginning until the end. I think talking to people and state questions, and I think I did something wrong. I always wanted to make questions, and I tend not to listen too much. And I think what I try to do nowadays is trying to listen more. So I think that is a good balance of having when you are a young person. Stay curious and listen to other people say and make your own sense of reality. And I would say sometimes things can be scary, but I think the only thing if you really want to do something, just keep going, because sometimes things can be difficult, but I'm sure there will be a door open here and there, and maybe maybe it's not the engineer, it's not the job, it is the door of criminology. Jump in, as I did. Okay.
Try new things.
Absolutely.
It would be your advice.
Yeah.
So Vania, thank you so much for joining us today. I don't know if there's something else you'd like to add at the closing of this interview. Something else you'd like to say?
No, I'm quite okay. Thank you so much for the questions, Gilda.
Thank you. It has been a pleasure to be speaking with you today. So thank you so much for sharing everything with us.
Thank you.